guys, so Abe Ovadia here. I'm here with Danial Lustig. He's an attorney based out of West Palm Beach. He's actually one of the first attorney that I met as an attorney, besides like the law school people and stuff like that. And he's here today to talk about how amazing he is and the different practice areas that he does. We work together on we co-counsel on some litigation injury cases and stuff like that. We refer out some FLSA cases, which is the Fair Labor Standards
Act.
There you go. Ooh, the A was easy. I thought the Abe's for Abe. It's always for Abe. It's always about Abe. So tell us, what do you guys are based out of West Palm. Do you guys have other locations?
We have a Wellington office and we have a Miami office.
Wellington and Miami. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then how many attorneys at the firm?
We have 10 lawyers and we have a of counsel lawyer that we handle some appellate work that we do.
Okay.
Through her.
So you guys got 10 attorneys. You guys have the 3 locations. What practice? Obviously, you do personal injury. You guys do the FLSA cases, which is unpaid overtime, unpaid wages, stuff like that. What else do you guys do?
So first, thank you for having me, Abe.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
the best part.
I gotta say, Abe, you are a good friend, and I remember that first lunch we had and how we just, got along really well from that point forward years and years and years ago. So I'm glad to see you.
I remember you at the Starbucks. We were at Starbucks and some employee slipped and fell right in front of him and he was shocked and he was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And the kid's like, I think so. I don't know. You're like, "Make sure you get that checked out, okay? You have rights." I remember that at the Starbucks right on Clematis.
That's the plaintiff's lawyer. And me. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we handle a lot of complex business cases. We represent lawyers. We represent doctors. We do whenever there is a subpoena for instance, in a personal injury case. If we get hired by the practice.
The medical practice. Okay.
To file a motion for protective order, to represent the practice, to make sure that all of their records and their contracts with insurance companies and things that are proprietary in nature are not divulged. Because what happens is once every year there seems to be a lawsuit that is brought by an insurance company against a practice or multiple practices. So the personal injury cases are a way for those insurance companies to collect information to build up their case that they file a later date in federal court.
Like a civil RICO, FDUPTA,
correct.
That kind of stuff? Okay.
Yeah. So right now we're representing we're doing a case involving civil RICO that an insurance company filed against a company, and we're representing them in that case, and we represent them in issues related to the other cases that they have open where they appear to be either a party or where they get deposed.
Okay, so that case was filed?
That case is filed.
Oh, okay. We don't have to talk about specifics.
Yeah, I can't talk about it specifically.
Yeah, but okay, so you do those. Because I do those, but I handle them before they get filed. And it's usually State Farm and Geico, right? Yeah. And they're like the two bullies on the block. They sue all the doctors for, in my opinion, bullshit things most of the time. Sometimes there's some validity, straw ownership, stuff like that. But I'll get involved pre-suit before filing, and they'll say, "Hey, listen, your doctor's small potatoes." They send a letter like, "Give us a call. If you have a lawyer, have them give us a call." And so I'll call and we'll negotiate something out. And I did like 5 of those so far. I'm doing one right now. It's Holland and Knight is representing State Farm. Is that who's on your case?
That's usually on the case.
Okay.
And what we do is, it's best to settle, like you said, pre-suit. So what you're doing is great because the last thing the doctor wants is a lawsuit where they get sued and
publicity,
bad publicity, which other plaintiffs' lawyers are not going to feel comfortable if their patients or if their clients choose to go to that practice for therapy,
right,
or for treatment. So it's always good to try to get things done pre-suit. So
like those guys that we just read about, I sent you that article with the liquid fusion. They should have called you first.
They should have called the firm.
They should have called you first. Yes.
Yes.
So you guys do those cases where you represent doctors. I know for my MRI centers, I own 2 MRI centers. We're opening a third. You're going to be representing us if we ever get deposed on any cases. You're going to be there. Just make sure that insurance companies don't overstep their bounds and stuff like that, right?
It's better that way. I think that every business deserves to be represented, just like every person deserves to be represented.
Mm-hmm.
And you work hard to create advantageous forms of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So who's to say that those relationships should be public, that they shouldn't be public?
Right.
So we do that. But in terms of representing people, individuals, I have represented people in defending them in copyright infringement cases, trademark infringement cases. I have sued under those 2 areas of law. I have a master's of laws in intellectual property.
You do?
I do. Never told you before.
That's like our friend Molly. She has a master's in taxation.
Yes.
She's never used it.
Yeah. But I do. I use that. I probably handle about 3 or 4 interesting IP cases a year at the firm, and then we do FLSA cases, which are great because it places the employee at an equal footing with the employer.
Okay.
Where the employee is able to actually ask the employer to be compensated, not only for what they are owed, but if you prove that there was a willful violation, then they can get double what they're owed.
Okay.
So, and then you can go back 3 years times of overtime. Now, there's a lot of exceptions under the law, so not everyone qualifies for overtime payment. So it's important to talk to a lawyer and see if they, if you qualify. If you don't qualify, then obviously there's no overtime case. Okay. Now, the overtime cases are good for the employee because the attorney's fees are not do not come from the settlement amount. They're paid separately.
Okay.
And the court has to approve the settlement. So there's a lot of steps that take place for people to get their negotiate their settlement and to get to a point where they can get their money and the lawyer gets paid separately.
Okay. So we referred you guys a case long time ago. 3 guys from Cuba. They didn't speak any English. They worked with a house flipping company, flipping houses. And I remember Dennis in our office got that phone call, and the guys said, "Yeah, our boss hasn't paid us. I think in 2 months he didn't pay." And he kept flipping houses and telling them, "Look, once I settle on this house, once I flip it, I'll take the money from the profits and I'll pay you the 2 months that I owe you." And these were guys that they didn't speak English. They're working 12-hour days, maybe more some days to get the house flipped on time, right? And then the employer said, "I'll pay you when I can." And it's like, these are people who live paycheck to paycheck. They can't wait that long. And I remember at one point they had enough. They said, "If you don't get us caught up, we're out of here." And then they called our office. We didn't handle those. We referred it to your office. And you did like a great job. Tell us about that case. What did you do on that?
So that's not only did they not get paid when they were supposed to get paid, because you're supposed to get paid every pay period. You're supposed to get paid what you're owed. Overtime.
What's a pay period? Does it have to be every 2 weeks or can it be once a month?
No, so every work period. So if you work on a 7-day period, you should get paid every 40 hours. Anything above 40 hours should be overtime.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
If you work, and then, so it's per week that you determine the overtime for, regular workers, for, police officers and for nurses and firemen. That's completely different.
Okay.
Because there's definitely exceptions to the law as it relates to what constitutes or what could constitute a work period for those folks. It depends upon their circumstance.
I learned about the work period back in the day, like 10 years ago, because I remember I was a small office. I had 5 to 10 employees, and I said, listen, I'm not paying you overtime if you work more than 40 hours Monday through Friday. If you want to come in on a Saturday, I'll pay you overtime for those hours, or a Sunday, I'll pay you overtime for those hours. And my lawyer at that time said, She said, "You can't do that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "That's my rule." They go, "No, they have these other rules. It's called the federal laws and the state laws against that." And so, is there state laws or just federal on that?
So there's state laws as it relates to minimum wage.
Okay.
But typically, if you bring a failure to pay minimum wage under the state laws, you have to show. You have to send a demand. There's a lot of different little things that have to be done. So you want to make sure that it's done properly. You want to make sure that the client hires the right lawyer, and that's something really important. You have to hire the right lawyer, because if you don't hire somebody aggressive, you're going to end up with nothing.
Right.
We are very aggressive in what we do. In that case, for instance, in the case with this 3 workers, they were asked to come to the office and sign something to get their check. So I was like, do not sign anything. They have to pay you no matter what. They don't get to give you a condition to pay you.
Okay.
They have to give you your money. They owe you the money. And then they would get phone calls and they would be told, "Oh, your lawyer's terrible. We're going to take your house." I mean,
They said you were terrible?
they said I was terrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So at the end, we resolved the case. We got a judgment because the guy that owned the company.
Well, you are a terrible lawyer in that if you're on the opposite side, they're like, "Oh fuck, this guy's gonna ruin me." That's when you're a terrible lawyer. When you're on their side, you're an amazing lawyer.
I'm an amazing lawyer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what'd you do to get that employer to pay?
So what happened was, because they were working on these different homes, I looked at the Florida's mechanics lien law statute, and I was able to put a lien on the homes where they worked within the last 90 days
Okay.
before I was hired.
Okay.
When the homes that they last worked during the last 90 days, we placed a lien on the homes, and then the guy was tied up. He couldn't sell the homes. So then they were interested about mediation. We went to mediation. The case resolved, and then the guy defaulted. He didn't pay.
Oh.
And what I did is the agreement that was negotiated, which was filed with the court, it's public record, required payment at a specific time period. If he wasn't paid, then there was a grace period. If he wasn't paid, then we got to get a judgment for what these guys were owed, which was about $100,000.
Ooh.
And
that was owed because of overtime and unpaid wages.
Correct.
And then there was penalties for not paying overtime and unpaid wages.
That was all within the $100,000. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
And that was
plus attorney's fees.
plus attorney's fees.
Ooh. Wow.
So what I did is,
I bet he regrets calling you a terrible lawyer, right?
I think he
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
because what we did is we had it set up where if he wouldn't pay, we would get a judgment, and then we would get the court to appoint what's called a receiver. And the receiver comes in, and the receiver was not only for the company, but it was also for him. So the receiver would take possession of all his accounts, of all his property,
His bank
of
accounts,
all-
his checking accounts.
everything.
Wow.
So the receiver would get appointed, and then the receiver would then be in charge of making sure that all the debt was paid.
Wow.
So he would have no control over any of his accounts anymore.
Wow. Why didn't this guy just pay the bill, man?
Because people like to play fast and loose. People like to feel that they can just agree to something and not do it.
He probably said, "Screw these 3 Cuban guys. They don't speak English.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a tough time getting a lawyer. I'll walk all over them." And then in comes the Costa Rican lawyer.
That's it. And then I met him in Miami, in the Miami office, because they were in Miami.
Oh, you met the clients there?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
I went down to Miami, and I met him there, and we got together, showed him what had to happen, and then within, the good thing about this cases is because they're handled in federal court, they get resolved quickly.
Yeah.
So it took about 7 months.
You like federal court. I don't like federal court.
I do like federal court.
Yeah, I don't like federal court. You like federal court. Federal court's very quick. You need to do things all the time. State court, things can drag out for years.
Yeah.
I like state court. Even if I'm a plaintiff, I like state court because federal court requires you to have a smaller caseload to be able to focus on this massive amount of deadlines that you get right when you get assigned a judge. They put out like an order right away. This, everything has to be done on certain dates.
Yes. So
it's harsh deadlines. Harsh.
They're very strict deadlines. The judges are in charge of their dockets. They run their dockets tightly.
Oh yeah.
And you have to be very. You have to be able to write well, because if you don't write well, then you don't get your point across, and the judge is not going to agree with you.
Guess when I figured out the difference between there, and there. Guess how old I was? Guess.
I think you probably were. I'd say about 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Close. In my first year of law school.
Oh, really?
I typed up our, like, what's that called? Like legal writing class or whatever it's called. I don't know. Legal writing something class. And I typed up the thing, and the professor was like, some of you need to learn the difference between there, and there. And I was like, must not be talking about me. And I'm looking around the room like, who's he looking at? And he's looking right at me. And so luckily I had a really good friend who taught me, like, you need to learn this. You're in law school now. And I was like, shit, it was bad.
You know, a funny story. When I was in my legal research class, I remember
LSV, legal skills,
legal
something.
skills, yeah.
I don't know, LSV. I remember that, those initials, yeah.
I remember I was, it was like the first week of law school, and I was overwhelmed with all the stuff was going on. So I was sitting there, I was probably daydreaming or something, and I hear the word Latin, right? And I'm in New Hampshire, okay? Not in Miami, not in New York. I'm in New Hampshire, and I hear the word Latin. So I raise my hand, and,
No.
and the professor looks at me. He's like, "So, Mr. Lustig, you speak Latin?" I looked at her. I was like, no. I thought you asked if somebody from here was Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, because Latin is very different than Spanish. I mean, Latin is like that's the root of how some of these legal words are built out. But I thought that was a pretty embarrassing moment back in.
I've had worse. I remember my, I forget what, it was some, I think it was like criminal law or something. And there was literally 5 minutes left on the clock. And I'm like, oh, great. She didn't call on me yet. This is great. I don't have to worry. Because in law school, they call it the Socratic method. They just call on you at random, and you got to answer all the questions about the homework for the prior day. And I didn't do the homework that one day, whatever. Maybe it was every day I didn't do the homework. But, she calls on me, and I go, I didn't read the assignment. I'm sorry. And she goes, well, give us the answer then. And I'm like, I didn't read it. And I look up and I go, there's only 5 minutes left on this clock. Can we leave early? And she goes, no. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah. And after I did that big donation to my law school, I got to see her again, and she was so nice to me. She totally forgot that whole thing happened and everything.
She forgot that you were called a 5 minute guy.
Yeah. Usually the minute, with daylight savings times, I lasted an hour and 14 minutes. And then I looked back at the clock and realized it was daylight savings. So yeah, I was like, man. Sorry, I've been reusing that joke all week. Daylight savings was like 2 weeks ago.
I know.
So go ahead. So what were we talking about?
No, we talked about this FLSA case.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we do that, and we do personal injury, like when it's like a significant injury case,
surgical cases, death cases.
Yes. So we have one case together involving an electrocution down in Miami. Okay. Involving FPL. And that case is in litigation, and we have this.
Was that the Caesar? Caesar?
It's Mr. Jimenez's case. Okay. Yeah. And in that case, we have this lawyer that used to work for the utility companies. Okay. That we hired as an expert to provide his opinion concerning what is it that FPL did wrong concerning the power line and how it was buried in the tree, and
he was trimming a tree in his backyard.
no, he was asked to bring down avocados from a tree,
Okay.
and he was electrocuted and passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, so we have that. We recently resolved an airplane crash case where this young girl who was in her first year of college was sleeping she went to rest in her room in a trailer park. And this Cessna came from Orlando, and the guy just crashed in her trailer. She did not die immediately from the crash, but she died of the smoke inhalation, and the house caught on fire, and her legs were cut off upon the crash. So she was actually alive for a few moments, according to the report from the medical examiner's office.
Wow.
And in that case was a very that case required a lot of insurance interpretation work, because there was a policy of insurance for the company where this gentleman was flying from, and that company had been founded by him.
Okay.
And we asserted that because he was on a mission for the company on that day, that company should be liable for the injuries and the losses to the family.
Was he the pilot?
He was a pilot of the plane,
of
too.
the plane, and he was the founder of the company.
Yes.
Okay.
They defend the case, claiming that he wasn't there for that purpose, all those things. And they filed the case. The insurance company finally, years later, files this case in federal court.
They filed a deck action to interpret the policy.
Correct.
Okay, wow.
And I defended also the family in the deck action, and the insurance company ended up resolving the case for the entire policy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The insurance companies have gone crazy lately. I see them filing more and more deck actions for material misrep cases. They file deck actions now. I just had a case where it's a homeowner's insurance case, and they sued the insured because he opened a claim, but didn't provide a proof of loss, saying how much money he was asking for, and they sued him. And I'm like, he opened a claim with you, and you're suing him because he didn't tell you how much money it's worth, but we didn't get that far yet. I think it's been 6 months, and he's been putting around with getting someone to do an estimate for him at his home, to let someone in, point out the damages. They write up an estimate, and they sued him. And I'm like, this is crazy. And they're not asking for anything other than to force him to give them a proof of loss. And I was like, he would have gotten there. Why did you do this? So those deck actions are getting crazier and crazier. We handled a case together where there was an attorney in West Palm Beach who he stole a bunch of money from his client's trust account, which is the worst thing you can do as a lawyer. What's worse than stealing client funds as an attorney?
Nothing.
Okay. So yeah, I was like, I wonder if yelling at a judge in court. I don't know. No, stealing client money is pretty bad. There's no coming back from that. He ran out of the money, and then he committed suicide. And you represented the plaintiff who had really, really bad injuries. Had 2 or 3 lawyers before you guys got involved. And you guys went after the estate of the lawyer for the money that he stole, and he had a malpractice insurance. And what did that case hinge on? There was one legal issue that case hinged on. I forget what it was.
So what happened in that case? The client, he had about 17 surgeries. 17
surgeries. Wow.
And it was a very sad circumstance because the lawyer literally stole the entire settlement.
How much was the settlement?
It was about $600,000, maybe.
17 surgeries and $600,000. Did he do a good job on that settlement, or was it a tough case to begin with?
I think it was a tough liability case.
Okay, liability issue.
There was a trial in the underlying case. Then there was a new trial because it was a defense verdict. The court found that there should be a new trial. And then they ended up settling the case for about $600,000. But this guy spent years and years and years in litigation.
Wow.
And the money gets stolen. Guy commits suicide, and
the lawyer stole the money, gave it to his sons, and then committed suicide, right?
Yeah.
And he stole money from his associates. He had an associate attorney working for him. He stole money from the associate's mother who had a case or something too, right?
Yes. So
it's crazy. What a dick.
It was some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would say, you know, it was a difficult case to begin with. We handled the case, and we were able to get it to a settlement posture that, you know, and, you know, there was a question of fact as to whether or not there was a negligent use of the trust account as opposed to stealing money.
Mm-hmm. Which is intentional.
So there's a question of fact as to whether or not the guy was negligent in the use of the trust account because of his personal issues with his whatever personal issues he had.
Either gambling, drugs, alcohol.
Correct. So whatever it was, there was a question as to whether or not he had confused accounts. So that was a negligent issue, which the insurance company said, no, we think this is not negligence. We think this is intentional. We're not going to give you coverage. Mm-hmm. And we're not only going to not give you coverage because of that, but we're also not going to give you coverage because he never renewed the policy before you asserted the claim.
There was an issue with the dates.
Yes.
He committed suicide, and then his policy lapsed like over time. And you guys brought the case came to you after all this stuff had happened.
Yes.
It came to you a long time later. And you guys put in a claim, and they're trying to say, oh, no, but his policy lapsed. And you said, well, no, all the acts happened right before he killed himself.
Yeah, so it was a claims-made policy, but there was a provision in the policy that discussed what happens if it's a sole practitioner, whether or not the policy automatically renews if the person dies, the person dies within the policy period.
Okay, and the associate attorney had resigned a week before his death.
No, she resigned the day of his death in the morning.
Okay, the morning of his death.
So he was no longer... He was...
Now a solo practitioner.
Now he was a sole practitioner at the time he died.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was our position in the case that, hey, this policy renewed automatically. You had a duty to protect them automatically, and that was a very interesting issue.
You had the email from the attorney, the associate attorney, to the partner. You had the email. It was dated, stamped. It's an email, and she agreed that she did that. That she resigned before he passed away. Now, obviously, when the guy killed himself, he didn't think about any of this stuff at all. He stole money. He was in a bad place. He probably had some kind of conversation with her. I think that was an issue in that case. And then he committed suicide afterwards. And so, you know what I love about you guys is you guys take on weird, really tough cases. But 17 surgeries, $600,000, money stolen. I mean, that's really shitty for that guy. You know, probably one day he's minding his business, gets rear-ended, or maybe there's a liability issue, so maybe it wasn't a clear rear-end accident. But now, years later, this kind of stuff happens, and you guys took that case to the 11th Circuit?
Yes.
That's freaking awesome. I would never take a case to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. No fucking way.
Yeah, so... We did that.
After that's the Supreme Court of the United States. If you don't know law, it's the Supreme Court of the United States, which I don't even think they'll let me in that like area of the building. They're like, no, get out of here, man. Get out of here. You're not that kind of guy. Get out of here.
So there's a district court, the circuit court, and the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And then in Florida, there's the circuit court, which is a trial court level, county court, which is for lower amount of money, circuit court. And then there's the district court, which is the appellate court level, which would be akin to the circuit court and federal court. And then there's the Florida Supreme Court. So
we've had a couple cases in the 3rd and 4th District Court of Appeals for our law firm. We haven't had one go to the Florida Supreme Court. Usually when it gets appealed, it's not a good thing, because it's just the amount of time and energy and stuff. But we've had a bunch of cases. I'd say we have about 5 cases now that have gone to the 3rd or 4th District Court of Appeals. And so, that like state court, I feel very comfortable in. Federal court is just very intimidating. It's very fast paced, very formal, very serious over things that in state court, like in state court, you can ask for an extension of time on any discovery pleading. But in federal court, you ask for an extension. The judge wants to know why and when you'll finish it, and is going to dock points from your homework assignment if you even if you're late.
Yeah, absolutely.
The federal judge, sometimes they won't even accept your answers if they're late.
That is a possibility, for sure. It depends upon the judge that you draw.
Yeah.
Talking about tough cases, we represent this doctor, and he was enjoined from practicing medicine because he had a non-compete. And he came to me when he was already enjoined. Okay. And he couldn't practice literally anywhere in Palm Beach County.
Oh. I think I know this guy, but let's not say any names.
I can't say any names. And,
is that case in litigation right now?
It's in litigation.
Oh,
but so, that was a very, very tough case. Again, in complex litigation cases, we have an appeal together on a deck action involving this guy out of Lee County. I don't know if you recall.
Oh, you were a badass on that case.
Yeah, and he was driving and he got hit by a tractor that had a trailer attached to it.
Yeah.
And the insurance policy covers both the trailer and the tractor separately.
Okay.
And there's a Florida Supreme Court case that says that, the insurance companies have to write the policies in a way in which, if they want to exclude something from coverage, they have to tell you. And if they don't exclude it specifically, then it's ambiguous.
Okay.
In that case, because the guy paid for coverage for the trailer and for the tractor, our argument is that the tractor coverage is separate from the trailer, and because the trailer cannot be driven by a specific driver, it has to be pooled, that the policy is ambiguous and there should be coverage, and the insurance company did not deserve to get summary judgment in the state court case over that issue.
So that was a case where I think it was Granada Insurance.
Yes.
Which is, in my opinion, honestly, this is not his opinion, this is my opinion, they are the shittiest insurance company besides United Auto, Windhaven, which went out of business, in Ocean Harbor. They look to deny every claim, in my opinion, and I've seen it happen multiple times. And they are the cheapest insurance company or substandard insurance company for truck drivers. So if you drive an 18-wheeler and you don't have a legitimate business or a big business, you hire Granada Insurance Company, in my opinion. Don't sue me. Daniel's keeping his mouth shut right now. He's like, Abe, shut up, man. He's kicking me under the table. Whatever. I don't care about Granada, But anyways, they filed a deck action against their insured.
Yes.
And got a default against their insured because their insured was a nobody, doesn't respond to lawsuits, so he didn't show up to court. They got a default and they tried using it against the injured guy who had nothing to do with anything. And you took that case, and so you ended up getting that case settled, right?
So I arbitrated the personal injury case.
Okay.
I got a verdict for the plaintiff.
Okay.
And the declaratory action, Granada was able to get summary judgment, which I think it was erroneous, and now it's up in the 3rd District Court of Appeal.
Okay.
On that issue, and then the reply is due to be filed on Monday.
Okay. Yeah, see, those cases piss me off because people pay for insurance.
Yeah.
So that when they're in an accident, stuff happens, and then the insurance company sues the insured and says, no. You see right here on line, like in the really small fine print, line E, you're not covered for this. What? I hate that.
You own the company, but you're not covered to drive the truck of your company.
That was the issue. He was not listed as a driver. He was listed as an owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
But the trailer is something different. The trailer should be covered because the trailer can only be pulled. You can't drive a trailer.
Okay, gotcha.
You have to pull it.
Okay.
And according to the policy, a trailer would be covered regardless of who pulls it.
Yeah.
So I think there was an error by the trial court granting summary judgment, and that's why it's in the third DCA.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys take some really complicated stuff that most lawyers I don't think even want to do. Like, I would never want that case to litigate that case. I don't mind litigating an injury case, but now there's an injury case, and then there's a deck action case to exclude coverage on that case. So, and meanwhile, the guy's injured. He's hurt. I think he had a surgery or he had a bunch of injections, something like that.
He had a couple surgeries.
He had a couple surgeries, and that guy's a trooper. But you guys take on some pretty intense cases. What's the most expensive case, or the one that really striked home for you the most? What case in your mind made you the best the happiest as a lawyer? Like you were happy handling that case or taking it?
Well, it's hard to tell because there's cases that you take that are very complex and sophisticated, and you are able to get it resolved in the most advantageous way for your client. So, for instance, I think that this case involving this doctor was extremely complicated.
The non-compete?
Yes.
Okay.
Very. Literally, it's like swimming against the current.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it was. And we were able to turn it around, and that was a big deal. The airplane crash case, I think that was a very significant issue because there's a lot of, there's a big loss of life, and you want to make sure that the family is compensated. I had cases where, there's a juice company. I'm not going to say the name. It's very famous. And they sued these business owners that would sell the juice on Amazon. And they were claiming trademark infringement and all these things. And I was able to defend.
So someone would let's say the name of the company rhymed with Schmapple. Okay.
I can't say the name.
No, I'm just joking. Let's say it rhymed with Schmapple or whatever. So they were buying Schmapple and then reselling it on
Amazon.
On Amazon. So I would go to a store, buy a crate of Coca-Cola, whatever, and list it on Amazon for sale. And the main company was upset about that?
The main company sued them because they claimed that they were infringing on their mark. And I was able to defend the case and file what's called a motion for judgment on the pleadings.
Okay.
Which is something that you do in federal court when you believe that the pleadings, even though they
Isn't that old school?
Well, in federal court it works.
Oh, okay.
And it does in state court sometimes.
Okay. That's an old school motion. Nobody really files that.
Not many people do. And what it is
tough to win that.
What it is even though this is what your pleadings say, even if the court takes the pleadings in the most advantageous way towards you as the filer,
as the plaintiff,
I still win.
Okay, right.
And so we filed that, and we ended up getting the case resolved, and it was a good resolution for the client. And the good thing is that the motion was filed and the case was resolved afterwards. So if anybody was ever to go back and try to sue this
reseller
company,
okay, the reseller or the main company?
No, the reseller. If anybody was trying to do the same thing again, they would see that they defended themselves and they were able to posture the case in a way that resolved.
So I thought once you buy a product, it's yours. Like if I buy this Sharpie pen and I get a really good deal on it and I want to sell it on Amazon, I can do that, can't I?
You can do it as long as you don't change the appearance or the packaging of how it comes.
Okay, because sometimes they say not for individual sale or something.
Correct.
Okay, but I could still...
Yeah.
So isn't that what these guys were doing? They were doing the same thing. They would just say, hey, I'm going to sell this.
Yeah, so what they would do is they would take,
let's talk about markers, so we're not talking about
They would take different colors of markers, and they would put them in one package, and then they would sell them.
Oh, so they repackaged it.
They did not repackage it because they did not take...
the juice out of the box.
And they did not take...
the ink out of the pen.
They did not take the ink out. And assume assume there's different colors that come together.
Okay.
And they're packaged, for instance, 4 reds, 4 yellows, 4 blues.
Okay.
So what they would do is they would take 4 reds and 4 blues, and they would put them in a box, and they would send them.
Okay.
But they would not change how they would come together.
So it hinged on repackaging and what that meant?
That's what they claim.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People spend money on stupid shit, right?
You know, I represented a vitamin company that got sued over reselling vitamins. You know, it's just stuff like that, you know.
And it's funny because the vitamin company probably bought vitamins from another vitamin company to begin with, like their base, you know.
Yeah.
There's got to be one guy out there who's making all the vitamin B and he just resells it to everybody else. Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, it's one of those things where there's so many different types of cases that could come within the realm of commercial litigation, but there's always the PI and the personal injury and the FLSA cases, which I think are very I think they're very fulfilling because you get to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, you get people that are hurt, you know, some remedy, some recovery, because we as lawyers, you as a lawyer, you can't change a person's health.
Right.
You can't. You know, you can't make them feel better. The only thing you could do is you could advocate for them and get them a fair resolution if somebody with money is there to pay, because in this country, the only way we get justice is with money.
Yeah.
You know, and I can heal somebody. I can't do surgery, but can make them better. The only thing I can do is protect them from the insurance company and make sure that they, you know, that they make a fair recovery. And that's what you can do as a lawyer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what people need.
I could do a knee scope. I've seen it done many times. Knee and shoulders is easy. I've been in the room. It's not hard. It's just hard. Oh yeah, okay, you're done. It's easy. That's not hard.
Well, I'm not gonna say anything about that because you and I had a claim. We worked together in the case against American. No, sorry, not American. Against an airline.
And
it was just an airline.
Yeah.
And that case was interesting because the guy got a knee scope. And he got hit by a cart.
A push cart. Push cart down the aisle. His leg, he's like me, he was a tall guy. His leg was in the aisle and they bumped it while he was asleep.
Yes.
And he rubbed his knee and he made a comment to the stewardess.
Yes.
Can you call them a stewardess or are they stewards now? I don't know.
I think they're flight attendants.
Flight attendants. Oh my God. Okay. Flight attendant. And you tore that flight attendant a new one because she said nobody told me anything about this at the time, and you asked her what she ate for breakfast or something, and she said, I don't remember.
What she also tried to make they were trying to make a claim that the cart wasn't that heavy. So I said, well, what's in the cart? And she said, well, that's the drinks and the ice. I said, well, how much did the ice weigh, the bucket? How many drinks did you have? And then how many cans? And so was the cart made or filled so that you could fulfill the entire flight? Yes. And was the flight full? She goes, I don't remember. Okay. How many people on aisle 1 did you give drinks to? I don't remember. How many people on aisle 1, A through D? I don't remember. Every single aisle. I went through every aisle. She loved you. She loved me.
Yeah.
And then I took the corporate representative of the company, and after that, the case resolved. But it was in federal court, and
let's not talk about the screw ups I had at the beginning of that.
You did not have any screw ups. Nothing that could not be resolved.
Nothing that wasn't fixable.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that there is an act, a law that gives certain immunities to airline companies.
Wow.
So, there's certain things, like for instance, negligence, that they're not immune from negligence. But if something happens when you're getting on the plane or getting off the plane because they don't help you, they're not liable for that.
Okay.
But if you get hurt because of a person's negligence, then there's some form of liability. But those cases are hotly contested all the time, so it's good to know how to do them and do them right, because if you plead something improperly in federal court, you're out.
Yeah, we filed that originally in state court, and then they removed it to federal court, which is like, oh, why do you guys have to do this? So yeah, I hear you. And so anything federal goes straight to you now, because that was the case that I hated in federal court. We don't do a lot in federal court, but it's when the insurance companies will remove it to federal court that it's like, ugh, I don't have time for this. So
we sued once a chain of hotels directly in federal court because there was an accident with this girl. She went on a water slide, and she's in the top. She goes down the water slide, and instead of hitting the water normally, the way it was pitched and the way the water was in the pool, she went straight down, and then she broke her leg right away. Like she just went in and boom, at the bottom. Her leg hit the bottom of the pool, and she had a fracture, immediate fracture. And so we sued the hotel chain in federal court. And I remember the lawyer for the hotel chain is like, I typically have to remove this cases to federal court, and now I have to get going and working right away because you've sued us in federal court.
Yeah, it throws them on the offensive sometimes.
Yeah, because they're so I was like, oh, that's great. I love federal court, so let's get on it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I have a case, Rapids Water Park. The guy went down that thing that's kind of like a giant toilet bowl. It like spins you, and then you pop out of a little hole. And he's cut open his whole head right here, dude. His whole head, he just cut it right open on the way down.
Oh, wow.
And Rapids is saying, no, he knew that was a risk when he got on the slide. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think that was a known risk to go down a slide like that. So,
is there a warning sign before you get on it
that says you're going to end up with like 10, 15 stitches in your head? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't know about that one. And
that's
I'm
what
like,
to try to claim in my case.
Yeah. Get out of here. That's not. How does that happen? Like you designed this. That's like the little boy. He was the son of a politician at that. It's the biggest water park in America, and he was decapitated on a water slide. And they're like, it's a known risk, and I'm like, no. He's an 8-year-old kid. There was no known risk. My kid goes down water slides all the time. I wouldn't let him go down a water slide if that was a possibility. It's a defect, and they don't want to admit that 1 out of a million people, either based on their weight or how the water hits, they could, get really hurt. So
I have an expert, a water slide expert. If you need one, I can share the name with you.
Yeah. We got to get that guy on the podcast.
Yeah.
Who's going to find a water slide expert? Those are hard to find.
Those are hard to find.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think we're good. We had a great time talking with you, Daniel Lustig from Pike Lustig, based out of West Palm, Miami, and Wellington.
Yes.
We're going to put your contact info if anybody wants to catch up with you or get your info or refer you complex litigation cases, injury cases, FLSA cases, trademark copyright infringement cases, and representing doctors when they get in trouble.
Doctors and lawyers.
And lawyers, yes. Cool.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, dude.